If one day you happen to come across a strange photograph, a child in West Africa sitting calmly on the back of a crocodile lying still in muddy water, behind them houses made of cow dung glimmering under the sun like ancient murals, and in the distance a man wearing a mask nearly half his height spinning so fast that the Sahel wind tears into a sharp whistle, you might think it was something born from imagination. But it isn't. That is Burkina Faso. A land where every story feels carved out of myth, every image cracked open from another world. And from that land of contradictions, one person has made the world turn its head: Ibrahim Traoré. But before that name became the symbol of a new generation, Burkina Faso, in the eyes of most people on earth, was almost an empty space. A place remembered only for poverty, instability, coups, and grim statistics. Old headlines once painted this nation as a dim spot on Africa's political map. Then suddenly, that dim spot began to glow. Not with skyscrapers or a booming economy, but with the willpower of a people who have suffered far too much. From the place that seemed most exhausted, a new breath rose. Burkina Faso is a country where reality and legend stand side by side without ever clashing. A nation where tribes hold astronomical knowledge ahead of their time. Yet millions still cook with wood and charcoal. A land whose mask festivals carry the weight of a spiritual library. Yet just one gust from the Sahara can bury its capital under a thick, toxic veil of dust. A people who live peacefully with crocodiles as if they were neighbors, yet endure political turmoil year after year. These contradictions are exactly what give Burkina Faso its strange, magnetic pull. It doesn't move according to the logic of the modern world. Every ritual, every myth, every trace of culture is a key to understanding why this land produces figures like Traoré, a young leader carrying the memories of many generations. Standing on the thin line between past and future, between ancient culture and a new geopolitical age. To understand Traoré, we must begin with the soil that shaped him. A Burkina Faso full of contradictions, harshness, and raw beauty. A place where even poverty carries the shape of resilience. Because no leader appears out of nowhere. They rise from context, from history, from the wounds and hopes of their people. The story you are about to enter is not the story of a poor nation. It is the story of a people who have stood up 9 times after falling 8. A nation with no sea, no abundant resources, no mercy from nature, yet possessing something far more important: a will that never disappears. If you're ready, we will go deeper into this land where life and legend walk side by side. Where houses of cow dung tell history, crocodiles tell faith, and masks tell the soul of the ancestors. And from that foundation, we will see the path Traoré is walking. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. To understand how a nation can stand firm through 6 decades of political storms, you have to look at the place where its people were shaped. Burkina Faso is not a land for the faint-hearted. Here, every rainy season is a fight for survival, and every dry season is a test of endurance. In this harshness, the people learned to push through adversity without a single complaint. In the south of Burkina Faso, near the border with Ghana, lies a small village called Tiabele. Just over 1 hectare of dry, unforgiving land holds a level of vitality and creativity no one expects. The homes of the Sena people here are not built with bricks or cement. They're made from a material most would use only to keep a fire burning: cow dung. But calling them cow dung houses is far too simple. To the Sena, these homes are ancestral heritage. They mix dung with earth, straw, and wood to create a compound that is both flexible and durable. Strong enough to withstand sun and wind without costing a single coin. The walls are as thick as a handspan. The entrance is only half a person's height, forcing visitors to bow as they step in, a gesture of respect toward the family inside. There are no windows, only small holes where light filters through. Every detail is a blend of indigenous knowledge and survival instinct. But what turns this housing tradition into a symbol isn't the material, it's the hands of Sena women. They don't just tend the household fire, they guard the soul of every wall. Every pattern is drawn by women. Every motif is carved by hand. then polished with stone for smoothness. Look at these walls and you can read the story of those who lived inside. A home isn't just shelter, it is a living narrative of the clan. The patterns aren't random, they are the marks of each family and each generation. No wall is like another. This is how the Sena record their history, their joys and sorrows, without written language. Every color, every symbol is crafted from scratch. After the artwork is done, they coat the surface with oil from the nare tree to protect it. The entire house must be completed before the rains arrive, or every bit of effort will be washed away. And in one of those quiet miracles of the earth, a newly built house must wait 2 days in silence. If a lizard enters, it is a blessing. If not, the family must tear the house down and start again. They believe a home only comes alive when a spirit animal steps inside. This isn't just a belief, it is their way of connecting human life with nature. Even in poverty, people keep space for the sacred. Look at these roofs and walls, and you'll understand why Burkina Faso is a land of upright, resilient people. The way they build their homes reflects the way they face life. No excess, no showiness, only steadiness and endurance. Every piece is placed with intention. Every step must be done with their own hands. Nothing is wasted, but nothing is abandoned. It is from villages like this that the spirit of Burkina Faso is born, a spirit that cannot be easily broken even after countless upheavals. When you see houses made of cow dung standing firm against the Sahel winds, you understand why this nation rises again and again. They are people born from the earth, raised under the sun and forged through hardship. And this is the land that shaped people like Ibrahim Traoré, a young leader carrying the traits of those who have long learned to stare adversity in the eye. To understand him, we must begin in the very places where every Burkinabe child grows up, where every wall holds a story, and every person carries a history that refuses to fade. If the previous part showed how history and culture shaped the resilience of the Burkinabe people, then this part reveals a different truth, sharper, harsher, and more unfiltered, because a nation is only truly strong when it rises from suffering. And Burkina Faso, for decades, has lived through realities most of the world only encounters in crisis reports. Set foot in the capital, Ouagadougou, on any ordinary day and you'll feel a thin layer of dust settling on your skin within minutes. Not just any dust, dust from the Sahara, from dirt roads that have never known asphalt, from worn-out artisanal factories, and from the smoke of millions of wood-burning stoves used by the poorest families. All of it mixing into an atmosphere the World Health Organization once listed as nearly 9 times more polluted than the allowed standard. On paper, that pollution is just a statistic. But for children growing up here, it is a battle they face the moment they wake up. Breathing becomes a responsibility, not a reflex. Coughing and shortness of breath become part of childhood. The boys and girls of Ouagadougou's outskirts don't know what clean air smells like. All they know is that when the harmattan winds blow from the Sahara, their hair turns the color of chalk. Poverty here isn't a condition, it is the backdrop of life. Average income barely rises above $1,000 a year. That number doesn't just describe scarcity, it reveals how generations have survived through sheer improvisation. People in the capital often juggle 3 jobs to make it through the day. Half the population lives in makeshift neighborhoods without electricity, water, or drainage. A single rainstorm can turn a whole district into a giant swamp. But poverty isn't only measured in material things. It lives in the absence of opportunity. Illiteracy reaches terrifying levels. More than half the population cannot read or write. In a world where knowledge determines the future, Burkina Faso is a country running on foot while the rest of the world travels by high-speed rail. Yet even pollution and poverty are not the harshest challenges here. The deepest wound is insecurity, an unrest that plunged entire regions into darkness. Many northern and eastern provinces were once known as forgotten lands. Extremist groups attacked villages, blocked highways, forced people off their own soil. In those years, the line between life and death became as thin as a breath in a cloud of dust. In this environment, Burkinabe children grow up with an intimate understanding that life promises nothing. Strength is not a choice, it is a requirement. When poverty becomes a teacher and instability becomes a companion, these children develop a resilience few places in the world can produce. Look at this young generation and you'll understand why a leader like Ibrahim Traoré was welcomed. He was born and raised inside these contradictions. He knows the dense, dusty air. He knows homes without electricity. He knows the helplessness of enduring endless instability. And because he knows, he stands up. Burkina Faso isn't simply poor. It is a place where every person must fight to exist. And from this land where hardship is a given, an invisible force has pushed the entire nation into a new season of awakening. If you want to keep exploring the inner strength of this nation, leave a comment and subscribe. Part 4 will take you into one of the strangest stories that shaped the soul of Burkina Faso. If there is one image powerful enough to speak for the courage of the Burkinabe people, it is the sight of children calmly swimming in a pond filled with hundreds of crocodiles. At first hearing, most would dismiss it as myth. But in the village of Bazoulé, just 30 kilometers from Ouagadougou, this is not only real, it happens every day, woven naturally into the rhythm of life. Here, crocodiles are not creatures of fear. They are called by a name filled with reverence, the ancient friends. Not predators, not threats, but members of the community, standing alongside the oldest spiritual values of the people. This extraordinary relationship didn't appear by accident. It began with a legend centuries old. The villagers' ancestors tell of a terrible drought, a time when trees withered, wells dried, and life felt as fragile as breath. In that desperate moment, a crocodile led the villagers to a hidden pond deep in the red earth. The water saved them. From that day on, crocodiles became protectors, beings believed to carry a sacred duty to guard the community and bridge the human world with nature. That belief shapes the very fabric of life in Bazoulé. Children swim beside crocodiles without a trace of fear. Women wash clothes at the water's edge, even stepping into the pond without hesitation. The crocodiles are gentle enough that someone can lay a hand on their rough backs. Not because the animals have somehow turned tame, but because humans and nature here share a silent, profound understanding. Watching this scene, you realize Burkina Faso is unlike any place on earth. In a land where survival is constantly tested, people do not face danger with fear, they face it with respect. While surrounding nations struggle with conflict, division, and violence, the people of Bazoulé offer trust to a creature the world sees as a symbol of peril. And in a way no one can fully explain, that trust is honored. The bond between humans and crocodiles in Bazoulé reflects a deeper truth. Burkina Faso is a nation that understands survival means coexisting with hardship. It means looking straight at danger, placing a hand on its back, knowing that one mistake could cost everything, yet refusing to tremble. Because they believe in their own resilience. This is the soil where a new generation is being shaped, a generation that does not see danger as something to avoid, but as something to understand and rise above. And it is this spirit that leaders like Ibrahim Traoré inherit. He grew up in a country where children learn to confront risk from the moment they know how to swim. A country where people believe that if you harm no one, nature will not harm you. Bazoulé is not just a curious tale meant to entertain. It is a spiritual emblem, a living testament to a rare human ability. The ability to turn fear into understanding. To turn danger into an ally. To stand firm in adversity through faith in one's deepest values. If you have seen these crocodiles, you understand why today, as Burkina Faso faces some of the greatest upheavals in its history, its people do not retreat. They have long lived beside danger, but have never allowed fear to define them. If you only look at the map, Burkina Faso appears to be a small nation squeezed between desert winds and tangled borders. But look deeper, and you'll see that what holds this country together is not resources, not power, but the way its people build everything from the smallest things. And nothing reflects that truth more clearly than the Mossi tradition of installment-style marriage, the custom of the country's largest ethnic group. At first glance, installment marriage sounds like a funny story to share over tea. But for the Mossi, it is a philosophy, a belief wrapped in the idea that the strongest things are built slowly. Patiently. No need for wealth. No need for glitter. Only persistence and sincerity. In Burkina Faso, a young man who wants to marry doesn't need to bring a huge dowry in one day. He doesn't have to empty his savings just to prove his worth. Instead, the groom's family brings gifts to the bride's family little by little. One year it might be a chicken. The next year, a bag of rice. Then a jug of traditional beer. A small goat. A few bundles of grain. Or a hand-woven cloth. There is no rush, no pressure. Everything moves at the natural rhythm of life. These gifts are not just material things, they are promises. Proof that marriage is not an impulse but a journey nurtured through time. Each visit to the bride's home is not just another installment, but another thread binding two families together. A smile, a greeting, a shared meal. These become the invisible cement. And year after year, two families that were once strangers grow close. Some men continue bringing gifts even 10 years after the wedding, completing the last pieces of their commitment. No one mocks them, no one hurries them. Instead, people see it as a sign of respect. A marriage, then, becomes more than the union of two people. It becomes the joining of two lineages. Look at this tradition, and you understand something deep about Burkina Faso. Its people don't rush, they don't skip steps, they don't trust things built in a single moment. They believe in the value of every small piece. Just like the way they build homes from cow dung. Just like the way they live alongside crocodiles. Just like the way they endure political storms decade after decade. The Mossi believe that what comes quickly is easily lost. But what is built with time endures. That philosophy is why Burkina Faso's society has not collapsed despite countless coups. It's why they keep their identity even through poverty and instability. And it's the same philosophy being revived in the rebuilding of the nation under Ibrahim Traoré. Traoré cannot transform Burkina Faso overnight. He never promised tomorrow would instantly be better. But like the Mossi paying marriage installments, he chooses to build piece by piece, step by steady step. Foundation by foundation. The first stone was reclaiming sovereignty. The next was restructuring the military. Then tightening security. Expanding education, restoring trust, every action laid down with a patience only those who know Burkinabe culture can truly recognize. And that is why the people trust him. Because they see the echo of their ancestors in the way he leads. They see in him not just a head of state, but someone carrying forward the spirit of their own nation. To understand Ibrahim Traoré, and why someone so young could rise to power in the midst of chaos, you have to open the door to the bloodiest chapter in Burkina Faso's history. A period in which each page of the nation's story was written with gunfire. With tears. And with an unbreakable resilience. Because on this continent, few countries have endured as many coups. Since gaining independence in 1960, Burkina Faso has been like a small boat tossed endlessly by violent waves. Every time stability seemed within reach, another storm arrived. And after each upheaval, the people had to rise again, even when their feet were already bleeding. The first coup erupted just a few years after independence, when the military overthrew the young civilian government. That event didn't just begin a cycle of instability, it planted deep doubt in the hearts of the people. Then, in the 1980s, the nation's story changed when a young man named Thomas Sankara appeared like a sudden gust of fresh wind. Sankara was the one who renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. He wanted to break dependence, empower the poor, and build a new Africa free from external control. His vision turned him into an icon, not just for his nation but for the entire continent. But even the brightest ideals cannot calm political storms. In 1987, Sankara was assassinated in the very room where he held meetings. The man who pulled the trigger was once his closest ally. Sankara's death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was the collapse of a rising hope. Burkina Faso fell into a darkness whose depth would only be understood years later. After that, Blaise Compaoré ruled for 27 years, long enough for an entire generation to grow up without knowing another president. He consolidated power by rewriting the constitution, suppressing opposition, and holding onto the seat by any means necessary. From the outside, the country looked stable, but inside, Frustration was rising like water behind a dam. In 2014, when Compaoré tried once again to amend the constitution and extend his rule, the people refused to stay silent. They flooded the streets, set the parliament building ablaze, and raised banners against dictatorship. The uprising forced Compaoré to flee the country, marking the beginning of another turbulent era. But overthrowing a regime does not guarantee stability. In 2015, forces loyal to the old regime staged another coup, brief but bloody. And just as a civilian government began to stand, jihadist insurgencies surged from the north and east. Villages were attacked, highways blockaded, entire regions slipped out of government control. Public trust collapsed. In this chaos, the military rose again in 2022 under Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba. But only 8 months later, Damiba himself was ousted by another group of soldiers led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré. And the most astonishing part? The people did not resist, they celebrated. They poured into the streets, cheering, as if for the first time they saw a leader who wanted to fight for them, not for power. Looking at this chain of events, some might say Burkina Faso is a land of pure disorder. But look deeper, and you'll see not disorder, but endurance. This nation has bled more than most, yet never surrendered. It has fallen countless times, but never once stayed down.
And its influence in the region.
And it is out of this
Moscow
very
has
context
finally
that
authorized
Traoré
a nuclear
emerges,
deal with
not as a polished hero, but as a man carrying the scars of an entire country. A man who understands failure, understands loss, and knows that the price of peace is always higher than outsiders can imagine. If you want to understand why Traoré is seen as the successor to Sankora's spirit, stay with this journey. The next chapter will take you into one of Africa's most mysterious tribes, where ancient knowledge offers a new window into the wisdom of Burkina Faso. If the first 6 parts revealed Burkina Faso as a land of adversity, trials, and endless political storms, then this part opens a completely different door, a door leading into the world of ancient knowledge. Because Burkina Faso is not only a place of poverty or war, it is also a keeper of spiritual memory that even highly developed nations struggle to possess. And no community embodies this truth more vividly than the Dogon people. Living along the steep cliffs of southeastern Mali and extending into the territory of Burkina Faso. The Dogon are like a mysterious footnote lying outside humanity's usual timeline of development. A tribe with no telescopes, no universities, no laboratories, yet holding astronomical knowledge that leaves modern science puzzled. While much of the world was still debating the nature of the stars, the Dogon had already described the orbital cycle of a star system nearly 9 light-years away. They call Sirius the Great Star. But they don't stop there. They say Sirius is not alone. It has a companion star orbiting it, named Ptolo, a small, dense celestial body with a 50-year orbit. What shocked scientists is that this information matches data that modern observatories only confirmed in the early 20th century. The Dogon even describe a third star in the system, called Maya. How could a tribe living on cliffs, with no telescopes, know about objects that even early-century observatories could barely detect? This has become a mystery debated by scientists, anthropologists, and cultural researchers for generations. Some argue the Dogon inherited an ancient system of observation. Some believe the knowledge came from prehistoric civilizations. Others cling to the legend that their ancestors were taught the sky by beings who came from Sirius. But regardless of the answer, the Dogon stand as proof that intelligence is not the privilege of wealthy nations. If the Sena build their homes with their hands, the Dogon build a library with memory and observation. If the Mossi preserve family ties with small ritual gifts, the Dogon preserve knowledge through oral stories, rituals, and symbols carved into stone. Their architecture is unlike anywhere else. Men's houses rise with pointed roofs like spear tips. Women's houses are flat-topped and sturdy. At the center of each village stands the toga, a meeting place where adult men gather to decide important matters. Their dwellings cling to the cliffside like miniature fortresses, defying the raging winds of the Sahel. And above all stands the Hogon, the village priest and spiritual authority. He does not bathe. He does not shave. No one is allowed to touch him. He is a sacred symbol of metaphysical power, believed to be the bridge between humans and the cosmos, between knowledge and mystery. Look at the Dogon, and you see a Burkina Faso that most of the world has never witnessed. A Burkina Faso that is not only poor, not only war-torn, but also home to a quiet, profound, self-sustaining intelligence. Just like Traoré today, the Dogon never waited for anyone's approval. They exist on their own terms. They prove themselves through understanding, not through words. As Burkina Faso enters a new era of revival, the Dogon stand as a reminder that this nation is not only strong in will, but strong in wisdom, a wisdom once seen as mystical, now rising as a spiritual foundation for a country on the rise. If the Dogon people represent the intellectual depth of Burkina Faso, then the Festima Mask Festival is the doorway into its spiritual world. This is not a performance, not a cultural show for tourists. Festima is the place where the living and the ancestors meet, where spirits and humans share the same space. And every mask is a living entity borrowing a human body to deliver a message from the past. Every year, around February and March, when the dry season reaches its peak, the villages around Ouagadougou prepare for the festival. The atmosphere shifts. Artisans carve masks late into the night. The smell of wood, earth, and sunlight blends in the air. Elders tell the younger generation stories about the masks that once saved the village from disease, or those said to carry the warnings of the gods. When the festival begins, the first sound you hear is the drum, deep, steady, echoing across the land like the breath of the earth. Then the traditional instruments join in, and the dancers enter, barefoot, their bodies wrapped in raffia, palm leaves, or bright cloth. On their heads are masks shaped like countless beings: antelope, eagle, crocodile, cobra, each mask a symbol, each symbol a story. What makes Festima magical is an unspoken rule: once a mask is worn, the wearer is no longer human. They become an ancestor, a spirit from the other world. That is why they do not speak, do not smile, do not meet anyone's eyes. They communicate only through footsteps, spins, and the rhythm of their bodies striking the ground. One of the most famous dances is the Kompa spin of the Bwa people. The dancer spreads their arms like the wings of a sacred bird and spins, so fast their form blurs. The spinning is not for show. It is how the spirit communicates. A fierce spin warns of danger. A slow one reminds the village of balance. The repeated stomps on the earth signal the spirit's presence. For the Nuna people, the masks are massive and square, so heavy only the strongest young men can wear them. Yet once the mask is on, they move lightly, as if guided by an unseen force. Their steps are deliberate and grounded, as if stamping the spirit onto the ancestral soil. Between dances, the Mo priests step into the center. They burn incense, scatter white powder on the ground, and whisper chants calling the ancestors, all in a language only villagers understand. As the smoke rises, the festival grounds feel like another realm, a place where the line between the living and the dead completely dissolves. The climax comes when the lead dancer kneels, head bowed, body trembling as if the spirit is leaving him. When the Mo priest's drum sounds 3 times, it is the signal to expel the spirit. The dancer removes the mask, and everyone turns away. No one is allowed to see the face of a person who has just carried a spirit. They believe the gaze could trap the lingering spirit and cause it to cling to the onlooker. These may sound mysterious, but Festima reveals something far deeper. Burkina Faso is a land that guards its memory. They refuse to bury the past. They let it live, let it dance, speak, warn, and that is why this nation stands firm despite all its trials. Look at Festima, and you will understand why today, as a new generation rises alongside Ibrahim Traoré, their belief is so strong, because they do not rely only on the people of the present. They believe their ancestors stand with them. If you want to enter the deepest part of the story, Part 9 will unveil the portrait of Traoré himself, and why he has become the symbol of a new national revival. Leave a comment and subscribe to continue the journey. After our journey has passed through the deepest layers of Burkina Faso's culture, history, and spirit, The story now leads us to the central figure of a new era, a man carrying the breath of the land. The memory of his ancestors, the resilience of his people, and the wounds left by 6 turbulent decades. That man is Ibrahim Traoré. But to understand Traoré's rise, you cannot see him as a political phenomenon appearing out of nowhere. He did not come from a vacuum. He emerged from a current flowing through generations. The current of the Sena people patiently building homes from cow dung. The current of the Mossi people shaping family bonds through slow, deliberate offerings. The current of the Dogon quietly reading the stars without a telescope. The current of Festima dancers borrowing the spirits of their ancestors to guard collective memory. All of that weaves together into the invisible foundation of a young leader. Traoré was born in a country blessed with nothing except the will to survive. He grew up with Sahara dust filling the morning air, with the sound of terrorist gunfire echoing across regions, with trust in government worn thin by repeated coups. He knew how fragile life could be in his homeland, and perhaps that understanding is what made him unable to stand back while the nation kept spiraling toward uncertainty. When Lieutenant Colonel Damiba took power in early 2022, many hoped he would turn the country around. But 8 months later, Burkina Faso was still drowning in bloodshed. Thousands were displaced, hundreds of villages abandoned, highways became danger zones, and the patience of the Burkinabe people reached its breaking point. It was in that moment that a group of young officers stepped forward. Leading them was a 34-year-old, not a high-ranking general. Not a seasoned politician. Just a soldier who believed no one but themselves could save their homeland. And the most astonishing part was this: when the coup happened, the people were not afraid. They poured into the streets. They cheered. They welcomed Traoré like a spark of light in the darkest night. That reaction was not the frenzy of the moment. It was the result of 60 years of disappointment, of pain carried since the days of Sankara, of a longing for a leader who would fight for them instead of fighting for a seat of privilege. Traoré arrived with sharp eyes and a calm voice. He didn't promise the impossible. He didn't paint illusions. He spoke first of sovereignty, then of security, of national dignity, and of the foreign powers that had turned Burkina Faso into a strategic battlefield instead of a land meant to grow. His words were not slogans. They touched the exact wounds the people had carried for decades. Traoré's rise was not sudden fame. It was the eruption of a faith repressed for far too long. A belief that Burkina Faso could stand on its own feet. A belief that they deserved a country where fear was not an everyday companion. People call Traoré the continuation of Sankara's spirit. But in truth, he is the distilled essence of an entire national identity. He is young, but tradition stands behind him. He is fierce, but his fierceness is fueled by the pain and hope of his people. He is not just a leader, he is the symbol of a new cycle. When the Burkinabe look at Traoré, they do not just see a man. They see themselves. They see a generation that grew up in hardship but refused to break. They see a nation knocked down countless times but never staying down. And they see a future, uncertain. Yes, but for the first time in decades. A future they have a reason to believe in. When you look at Burkina Faso today, you see a nation standing between two lines that appear to point in opposite directions. One pulls toward the past, toward cycles of coups, poverty, terrorism, and a long, stubborn distrust. The other stretches toward the future, toward sovereignty, defiance, and a young generation determined to redefine the country with its own feet. And at the intersection of those two lines stands Ibrahim Traoré, not as a savior, but as a historical hinge, where ancient legacies converge to open a new path. What's striking is that instead of starting with bright promises, Traoré acts like someone who knows exactly where his nation's wound lies. He touches the weakest point, sovereignty. For decades, Burkina Faso was a playground for foreign powers, where decisions about security and resources were made in meeting rooms thousands of kilometers away. People didn't always voice it, but they felt that injustice like a thorn buried deep under the skin. Traoré didn't promise to erase terrorism overnight. He didn't promise to make the nation wealthy in a year. He simply said the country must stand on its own legs before it can think of anything else. And that shift shattered the geopolitical map. For the first time in years, Burkina Faso began deciding its own direction: security, energy, military partnerships, diplomacy. But what makes people trust Traoré isn't just policy. It's the way he sees the poor. The way he speaks about forgotten rural areas. The way he acknowledges villages the world map doesn't even bother marking. For the first time in decades, a leader is speaking not only about the capital, but about borderlands where children grow up in red dust. Where mothers get sick but cannot reach a clinic. Where farmers are trapped between hunger and armed groups. He has returned the army to its true purpose, not politics. Not surveillance, but protection. He tells his soldiers, the army cannot be strong when the people are weak. That message hits the hearts of those who have lost far too many loved ones in the years of terror. Alongside security, Traoré began rebuilding the nation's spirit, not with slogans, but by awakening values rooted deep in Burkinabe culture. The patience of the Mossi. The harmony with nature of the Sena. The observational wisdom of the Dogon. The ancestral connection of Festima dancers. These values, once dismissed as old-fashioned or irrelevant, are becoming the spiritual foundation of a new era. But this new map of the nation is not drawn only with spirit. It is drawn through a shift in how people see themselves. From a country once labeled the weakest in West Africa, Burkina Faso is slowly shedding that inferiority. From a population used to enduring, they are becoming a population that demands, that resists, that stands up. The most important change is not how far they have gone, but that they are no longer afraid to move. Every small step is a stone placed on the foundation of tomorrow. Not a distant future. A future that begins now. Burkina Faso is not yet a success story. It is a restart. But beginnings are often more telling than endings. Because when a nation that has endured so much pain can still rise and redraw its own map, it reveals an inner strength that even global powers can no longer ignore. When we reach this part of the journey, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. Burkina Faso is not changing because of a single decision or a single man. Its transformation is, at the core, the response to a call rising from deep within the nation's soul. A call compressed through generations, through years of poverty, fear, disappointment, and abandoned efforts. When Ibrahim Traoré stood up, what shocked the world was not his action, but the powerful answer of a people long mistaken for silent. That feeling was most visible on the streets of Ouagadougou the day Traoré appeared. People didn't wait for press statements. They didn't wait for invitations. They poured into the streets on their own. They brought flags, drums, and cheers, not the chaotic noise of violence, but the sound of a reborn belief. An elderly man, with teary eyes, said he had witnessed coups since his youth, but this was the first time he felt the people were reclaiming what belonged to them. This forces us to ask, what made the people of Burkina Faso, a nation known for quiet endurance, rise all at once? The answer isn't political. It is cultural. The Burkinabe carry a unique quality. They speak little, but they never forget. They endure, but they never accept defeat. They prefer to watch, listen, and wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, their momentum is stronger than that of many larger nations. History proves it. When Compaoré tried to rewrite the constitution, they rose. When weak governance allowed their territory to shrink, they rose. When trust was betrayed, they rose again. These uprisings had no clear leaders, no central organization. They came from instinct, the instinct of a people long accustomed to saving themselves. Because they know that if they wait, no one else will do it for them. This is what makes Burkina Faso's identity remarkable. Its people do not demand much. But what they demand is exactly what matters. They don't need a wealthy leader. They don't need a glamorous government. They need honesty, determination, someone who doesn't speak for them, but speaks with them. Traoré became that voice, not because he is a skilled orator, but because he said the simplest truth. This country must belong to its own people. The army must protect the citizens, not power. Burkina Faso cannot remain under someone else's shadow. When he spoke, the people recognized their own heartbeat in his words. The surge of national spirit is most evident among the youth. Young people who grew up in chaos, who've never known long-term stability, yet are the very generation with the strongest desire for change. They don't just want to survive hardship, they want to transform it. They see Traoré not as a distant president, but as the front-runner of their generation. He is young like them. He speaks like them. He carries the country's wounds like they do. And when the youth ignite, the entire nation ignites with them. This spirit spreads across villages, provinces, and borderlands once darkened by gunfire. People are talking more about the kind of country they want. They debate sovereignty. They discuss security. They think about the future. A nation once considered silent has begun to speak. The most important thing is not how loud that voice is, but that, for the first time, it is acknowledged. For the first time, the people feel they are not standing outside their country's story. They are the protagonists. Burkina Faso is entering a period in which national spirit has become its greatest source of energy, an energy distilled from pain, memory, hope, and dignity. When this journey reaches its final chapter, the clearest thing that emerges is no longer the story of a young leader, nor the story of a poor land in West Africa. What appears instead is the image of a people who have walked so far through the dark that they now have the courage to step into the light. Burkina Faso is not a country the world watches with expectation. But precisely because of that indifference, they have the chance to write a story no one saw coming. A story that began with houses made of cow dung, with gentle crocodiles, with spinning masks in sacred courtyards, and now ends with a generation hungry to redefine their future. Burkina Faso has no sea to build a port, no oil to trade for wealth, no claim to being the center of the world. But they have something many nations are losing. They have unity forged through hardship, the quiet intelligence of ancient tribes, a dignity passed carefully from generation to generation, and the memory of rising again and again without waiting for anyone to save them. For 60 years, every time the nation fell, it stood back up, slowly, quietly, but surely. Like the Mossi paying marriage gifts one by one. Like the Dogon gathering knowledge year after year by watching the sky. Like the Sena carving each pattern into their earthen walls. Like the people of Bazule placing absolute trust in the crocodiles the world sees as dangerous. All of these things may seem unrelated to politics, yet they form the backbone of a nation. When Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, he didn't bring a brand new ideology. He simply touched what had always existed deep in his people. He called out the pride they thought they had lost. He revived the dignity they feared was gone. That is why Burkina Faso's transformation does not look like a reform imposed from above. It is an awakening rising from below, an awakening where every citizen feels they are part of it. When they stood up, they did not carry slogans. They carried long, unspoken pain, and hope that had become essential. Today, Burkina Faso is not yet wealthy, not yet fully at peace, not yet done solving the complicated pieces of security, development, and stability. But what they do have is a beginning. And sometimes, in the history of nations that have endured so much loss,
where Russia
a new
continues
beginning
to
is the
deepen
most
its
precious
ties
thing of all.
and expand.
The future of Burkina Faso is not a prediction. It is a choice. A choice made by every citizen refusing to live as their ancestors once had to endure. A choice made by a young generation who believes their country can be different. A choice made by a people underestimated far too many times, now ready to show the world their true worth. When a nation rises for itself, no force can extinguish it. No darkness is thick enough to cover it forever. Burkina Faso is walking its own path. Long or rough, it is still the path they chose. And that is what defines the dignity of a nation. If you believe every people deserves the right to rewrite their own destiny, leave a comment and subscribe to continue this journey. We will meet again in new stories, where the quiet flames of resilience continue to burn.